Year 150 before Christ. 30,000 Lusitanians have been betrayed by Galba, and a large part of the Lusitanian nobility is dead or enslaved, so apparently the Hispania Ulterior is at peace. On the other hand, the Hispania Superior is in a more consolidated peace, as it was achieved through a bilateral treaty between Rome and all the Celtiberian tribes. To add some context before continuing, it should be mentioned that in the year 149 before Christ, the Third Punic War begins, which forced the Romans to divert resources from all over the Republic towards Carthage to finally end this rival once and for all. In the Lusitanian territory, there is a growing unrest due to the betrayal and ignominy to which they were subjected, and a shepherd named Viriato begins to gather soldiers to carry out increasingly daring incursions into Roman territory. Time passes and the name of Viriato begins to resonate in every tribe, in every house, in every corner of Lusitania. It crosses borders and begins to be known by the Betones and Carpetanos. Everyone knows that there is a shepherd who gathers troops to confront the invader. The incursions begin to bother the Romans, who begin to mobilize resources towards Hispano-Ulterior with the intention of hunting down who they called a simple bandit, but a bandit who was getting stronger and stronger. In the year 147 before Christ, Viriato was acclaimed leader of all the Lusitanian tribes and started a war against Rome. But a war that Rome was not accustomed to. A guerrilla war coordinated by Viriato began. Nothing to do with the solitary armed groups that Galba faced in the campaigns 3 and 4 years ago. Viriato's strategy was as simple as it was effective. The Lusitanians, again allied with the Vetones, attacked the Romans day and night, harassing and bleeding them little by little. At the same time, when Viriato saw the possibility of inflicting a major defeat on the Romans, he quickly gathered his men and a pitched battle took place, but we will discover this strategy throughout Viriato's life. For now, war had been declared between Rome and the Lusitanians, marking the start of the so-called Lusitanian War. Viriato invaded Turdetania, which is this territory here, leading 10,000 men. But soon things went awry. He was surrounded near Urso, present-day Osuna, by the troops of the praetor Gaius Vatilius. Viriato ordered his men to form a battlefront. But as soon as the legions began to advance, the leader ordered the dispersion of the army, indicating where and when they should regroup. To cover the retreat, Viriato stayed with 1,000 men harassing the Romans and letting them pursue him. Finally, Viriato reached a gorge of the Guadiaro River, where his army had prepared an ambush. The Romans, seeing that they could capture Viriato, went after him and fell into the trap, with nearly 4,000 legionnaires dying. The roles were reversed, and it was now the Romans who were fleeing from the Iberian army that was relentlessly pursuing them, until a battle took place near Tribola in the current region of the Serrania de Ronda. In this skirmish, the Romans completely lost their army, with Caio Betilio himself dying. Just like a few years ago, Hispania Ulterior was left defenseless and open to any looting or attack that the Lusitanians decided to carry out. Viriato's leadership had been strengthened. The following year, in 146 BC, Gaius Plautius and Claudius Unimanus were appointed praetors of the Ulterior and Citerior provinces respectively. Both praetors knew they had to unite to be able to face Viriato and his army, otherwise they ran the risk of the rebellion growing uncontrollably. The Lusitanians now dominated the entirety of Ulterior Spain and part of Citerior. Here I am going to make a small note so that the magnitude of what happened can be seen. The Roman Republic held the legion's standards in high regard, as they were a symbol of power, and losing them showed their enemies that Rome was not invincible. Whenever an enemy stole a Roman standard, they usually didn't survive for long, as the Romans invested vast amounts of money, men, and time in recovering it. The cost didn't matter when it came to a standard. Knowing this, I must say that this could have been one of the turning points in the war, as now Viriato would have a very difficult time achieving a lasting and guaranteed peace agreement with the Roman Republic. Perhaps this was not his intention either, and he simply intended to wage war with Rome and win every time they sent an army to invade Lusitania. We will never know for sure, but if this really was his intention, in my opinion, it was doomed to failure. In fact, and returning to the history of the peninsula, it is in this year that the Third Punic War ends, which results in the complete destruction of Carthage at the hands of Publius Cornelius Scipio Aemilianus, grandson of Scipio Africanus, freeing the Romans to send all necessary resources to the peninsula in order to subdue the Iberian tribes again. The strategy was sound, the idea was good, but time was against him, and Gaius Plautius, seeing how the rebel coalition was devastating his province at an accelerated pace, decided to try to stop the Averni alone and set off with his men to meet them. The battle's location is unknown, but it is known that it was very brief and that the Romans suffered a defeat. Gaius Plautius retreated to some point south of Toledo and Talavera, where he tried to prepare a defense and buy time for Claudius Unimanus to come to his rescue. But Viriathus did not waste time and advanced towards his position, looting everything in his path. He confronted Plautus and his men, defeated them, and annihilated them. His army. Knowing that Claudius Unimanus would soon arrive to confront him, Viriatus decided to continue devastating the province and took Segobriga, a city that has since disappeared but whose location is known as it currently has an important archaeological site. After looting the enclave, he learned that the army of Hispania Citerior, under the command of Claudius Limanus, was nearby, so he gathered his men and decided to gradually retreat in order to gain time for his men to rest and new soldiers to join his cause. The rebels' advantage was time and their knowledge of the terrain. If they managed to carry out swift attacks, the Romans would not be able to defend themselves in an orderly manner, so Viriato was constantly highlighting troops that harassed the Romans. In this way, he arrived near Urique, in the south of Portugal, where he finally decided to fight the Romans after having worn them down throughout the journey and having reduced their morale and their will to fight. Viriato faced the troops of Claudio Unimano, crushing them, stealing their banners and triumphantly displaying them in all the towns he passed through, humiliating the Republic. In the year 145 before Christ, Rome realized that Viriato was no longer a mere troublemaker. He was an important enemy leader who could expel the Republic from the peninsula. That's why both provinces were given consular status, so both were governed by the same consul. The consul chosen to lead the war was Quintus Fabius Maximus Aemilianus, who landed on the peninsula in command of 15,000 legionaries and 2,000 horsemen, to which were added the legions stationed in Hispania. Fabius Maximus established his base of operations in Orsona, now Osuna, threatening to cut off supplies to Viriatus, so the Lusitanian leader decided to withdraw from the Citerior and try to maintain the ulterior Hispania. Viriatus had not yet been defeated, and his name resonated more and more strongly in more and more parts of the peninsula, especially in a territory quite belligerent with Rome, Celtiberia, and in one of its most important cities, Numantia. The rest of the year passed without any notable incident. In 144 before Christ, Fabius Maximus became proconsul of the provinces of Hispania and chose to battle Viriathus. Both armies clashed in an unknown place, but it is known that Viriathus suffered his first defeat and Rome showed the rest of the peninsula that the leader they acclaimed was not invincible. Viriathus was forced to retreat to Vihicula, present-day Belen, yielding most of the further Hispania. Rome had achieved a significant victory but had failed to capture the Lusitanian leader, so the war would continue. Unbeknownst to them, Viriathus had successfully rallied many tribes to support his cause. The Celtiberians were going to war.